right, well, welcome to our first episode of EY Growth Bites, conversation series with today's top CDOs to discuss how they're revolutionizing business operations by harnessing the complete spectrum of data and AI. I'm John Dubois, a leader in data and analytics here at EY, where I've had the pleasure to work with some of today's most innovative CDO and technologists from around the world, and seeing how they're leveraging a lot of innovation to unleash a ton of potential in their enterprises. Today, we're honored to have Veronika Durgin join us. Veronika is the Vice President of Data at Saks, a premier luxury e-commerce platform. In her role, she's responsible for data strategy at Saks, from driving enterprise digital transformation and governing enterprise data to enabling data efficiency and supporting analytics and reporting of the full customer shopping journey. So welcome, Veronika. Awesome to see you again.
Hi, John. Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here, and then flattered that you're honored that I'm here. I think it's the other way around.
Well, Veronika, before we get started, I know, you and I have had a few conversations and share a lot of interests in common, but I thought it'd be great to get to know a little bit more about your journey. So maybe you can share a little bit about how you got your start in data, and maybe
Uh,
even how you moved into the current role.
yeah, absolutely. First things first, kind of legal thing. My opinions are my own and do not represent my current or former employers. So before we dive in, just wanted to get that out of the way. About me, interestingly, um, I did not originally start in any sort of engineering. And I remember saying I fell into data, and somebody said, "No, you didn't. You spent your entire career working in data." But here's my journey. So my family and I immigrated here. I was 17. As many immigrant families, my parents wanted me to be a doctor. So after spending a year learning English, which is actually an interesting thing that also kind of influenced how I look at things, I went to college as pre-med studying biology. Uh, Cannot say I felt very passionate about biology or medicine. Um, so I ended up taking, but I was always good at STEM, like any sort of science and like math and physics. So I ended up taking a bunch of different classes. As I was getting my degree, I got a job processing blood samples at a hospital lab. So talking about interesting opportunities. And at that time, they used like dumb terminals and there was an app, and I just figured it out. So I turned into this like their go-to person for anything related. How do I do something with the app? So, and then the person I worked with, she's like, my husband's looking for a computer operator. Would you be interested? And I'm like, absolutely, way better than, centrifuging blood tubes. And that's kind of how my like technology career started. So I was a computer operator. That's when I got my first introduction to Microsoft Access. Here's, my first dipping my toes into data. And then eventually I landed a role as a junior DBA. And that was right around the time I got my bachelor's degree. And that's when I absolutely fell in love with it. I'm like, I get it. I love it. I want to know more. And that was over 2 decades ago. And I was like, okay, I don't have any real like knowledge of technology because I never really studied it. So I went back to college, and at the time there was no degrees in data. So I ended up getting a master's degree in software engineering. And
Mhm.
honestly, if I had an opportunity to go into software engineering, I would have loved it as well. But I just stuck with data.
Mhm.
And then, kind of, got married, had kids, but steadily during that time, I kept being a DBA. I ended up being focusing on performance tuning optimization. So that was kind of like my specialty, like making sure that those database servers are like purring and performing the best they could be, which was, I think, honestly, an amazing boot camp. And eventually, after many years of doing that, I was like, all right, I'm bored. What's next? And that's when, Snowflake came about. And I was like, all right, I want analytics. I'm done doing operational data. Now I want to look at analytical data, and then kind of changed my journey. I've also spent my entire career in data, did various different roles. And always just followed my curiosity. So the other thing that's like interesting about me, so data for me is not just my career. I mean, I do have a very demanding job. It's also my hobby.
Oh,
So while, when you're working for a company, your goals and decisions are focused on basically doing the best for the company to move company forward. But when data is your hobby, that's when my mind goes wild. And I
mm,
can learn anything and I can look at things. So as my like non-paid job, I am also a Snowflake data superhero. I chapter lead the Data Vault, which is modeling user group. I speak, I just participate in different kinds of events. So I kind of, data is my life basically. My kids are also older, so I can actually focus a little bit more on my hobbies too.
awesome. Awesome. I didn't realize. So we have a little more in common because I studied engineering and was in biomedical engineering and had a similar journey. I was introduced to Cameralytics with where we were tracking professional Olympian athletes and calculating stress in joints. But what I took out of that was an interest in both the data, the animatronics, and the software that we had to build to do that. And so set me on a different journey as well. So
Yeah.
that's interesting, another parallel for us.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, it's clear you have a passion for data, and I think it would be really hard for us to at least not touch one topic that I know you and I have similar approach around, and that's this idea of that, generative AI has kind of exploded in the past couple of years, and I'm seeing like boards asking for advice. And I think what we're really feeling is that there's been this spotlight on data because it's one thing to do out of the box Gen AI stuff, and it's another to actually have something that's more enterprise ready or that understands your business. And so I'm curious, how has your experience around data, how has that impacted you as this, the new sizzle topic of Gen AI has sort of captured the imagination of executive leaders?
Yeah, I am tired of the hype, to be honest. I get, obviously I get a lot as part of kind of like my regular day to day, but I also get a lot of information outside, and
Hmm.
it's exhausting. It's like cognitive overload, sorting through like the hype versus useful things.
Hmm.
Um, so to me, the way I look at Gen AI is like the cherry on top.
Hmm. Yeah.
But we have to bake the cake
Yeah.
because tomorrow there's going to be some sprinkles, but we
Yeah.
won't have the cake to put them on. So, and like your data foundation, knowing what data you have, making sure that it's stable, that you can access it, we need to focus on that. So then Gen AI or whatever sprinkles, whipped cream, will be able to put it on top. So the foundations of data management haven't changed. With
Yeah.
Gen AI, though, the interesting wrinkle is that Gen AI looks at unstructured data.
Hmm.
And while we're struggling to organize our structured data, we haven't even talked about unstructured data.
Yeah.
So like, let's get the foundation. Let's make sure it's organized, whatever that means, so that you can actually access it. Because
Yeah.
no matter what you do, analytics, reporting, ML, AI, you need data that is the appropriate quality for that specific use case.
Yeah. I'd like to dig into that a little bit because at EY we have a concept around getting your data ready for AI, and I'm interested in your perspective on that concept. I mean, you touched on it
Mm.
a bit, but it'd be good to hear a little more from you around where are you seeing like quick wins, and then where are you seeing the long game as it relates to getting data ready, whether that's structured or unstructured.
Right. Um, so maybe kind of like take a step back a little bit of like, what is AI to me? Like we talked about data science. That's a whole other thing. Like we failed at data science. Now we do an AI, which is really data science. But what is AI? This is how I kind of break it. So there is machine learning,
Hmm.
which existed, still exists, still very valuable. Then there's Gen AI,
Hmm.
right? And then there's tools that say they're AI, they might or might not be, but they have ML or Gen AI in them. So
Hmm.
they kind of like you need different things for different these like buckets. So
Mm-hmm.
for machine learning, obviously, you need kind of like specific grain data of specific quality, of
Mm-hmm.
specific size, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you want to do predictive analytics. That's your, structured data. For Gen AI, you need, your unstructured data, but again, you need enough of it. You want to make sure it's good quality.
Mm-hmm.
Summarizing mishmash draft documents might not be exactly what you're looking for. And
Mm-hmm.
specifically for apps with AI, governance is important. Are you sending data to someone else? What are they doing with it? There's all the stories coming out where, companies are getting fined because their AI tool made some decision that was inappropriate, illegal, etc. So
Mm-hmm.
how do you prepare your data? I mean, structured data, we can talk about it nauseum, make sure it's stable, it's historical, it's of the appropriate quality. And I want to like kind of focus here. I'm not saying high quality. I
Yeah.
think it's really, it depends on the situation. So, and you don't have to say that I need to get all my data in order to take it a step further. Just
Mm-hmm.
get the slice of data that you care about for that specific situation use case
Mm-hmm.
and get it going. And unstructured data, to be honest, I'll be lying if I said I figured it out. I haven't. But I think the pattern, the foundation is the same. Know where it is, know the quality of that data, and make sure that you have enough of it to use it appropriately. Yeah.
Yeah, we should talk on unstructured. I built a company around that, so that would be a fun conversation maybe for next time. But all right, so we talked about the obligatory Gen AI and its impact there. Let's sort of shift a bit because in customer facing companies like yours, obviously, you've probably been reliant on first party data and maybe even second and third party data. Curious on your perspective on the shift that we're seeing as there's more pressure around privacy concerns and considerations, and frankly, just difference in consumer behaviors and their sort of beliefs. And how are you thinking about the use of data assets going forward?
Yeah, and just not specifically talking about the company, but like in general,
Yeah, yeah.
I I mentioned this when we chatted before. This book called Infonomics by Doug Laney, which
Hmm.
was just there are points in my life where a book or a blog just makes such a massive impact on me. And this book was one of them. It's talking about the actual value of data. Data is an asset, right? Like, so outside of like, obviously, there's this massive push. That's the world we live in of personalization, right?
Hmm.
How
Yeah.
do we make your experience to be unique to you? And
Hmm.
and quite frankly, I'm like that. Like if you send me like I don't know, canned email and you don't spell my name correctly, I get upset, right? Like,
Yeah.
so I expect at this point from everyone to personalize their communication with me. And
Hmm.
this is where your first party data comes into play, and we'll talk about zero party data. But there's also this kind of like other side of it, which is what the value of data. Every
Yeah.
company has valuable data, and actually now with Gen AI, it'll become even more valuable because
Hmm.
the internet will run out of high quality data like next year.
Hmm.
So now the data that you collect, the data that somebody is giving willingly to you will become more and more important from kind of like monetization perspective, not necessarily selling it, but like what else can you do with it that makes your specific company special? The
Hmm.
other thing that Doug talks a lot about, which is again kind of like a little, I don't know, to me it was like a little obvious, but also mind-boggling,
Hmm.
is so zero party data, right? It's the data that somebody is willingly giving to you in exchange for something. So it's
Hmm.
in their interest to give you the best, the highest quality data. This is your zero party data.
Hmm.
And loyalty programs is a great example of that, right? And
Hmm.
then there was such like kind of like how you can monetize this data, not only like again to improve your customer experience, but also use it in other ways. Over COVID, some airlines used loyalty data as collateral to
Hmm.
get loans from the banks.
Hmm.
So it's like, yes, you know first-party data is great data to personalize. Zero-party data is the highest quality data you can possibly get. Again, and you can focus on improving customer experience, but you can also look at this data as this big asset to your company that could be used for other things, for like maybe more creative things.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today and joining us as our first guest in this new series. Be sure to check back soon for more conversations with today's leading CDOs.
Thank you, John, for having me.
Yeah, thank you.